Hey guys, UmaPokke here, and for today's video is going to be something a little bit different. It's not going to be related to the guides or CM or anything, and just a sentiment that I think players such as yourselves watching this might be feeling because you actually click on this video, which is Uma Musume too difficult, right? Is Uma Musume too hard as a game? And the reason why I wanted to bring across to you guys this topic is because of this incident that happened to my Uma Musume community a couple of days back. And even though this is just a singular entity, right? It doesn't really matter who this guy is. It's just literally a one guy scenario. But I feel that a lot of things that this guy said might also represent a larger population of the player base, because what he is saying, the beliefs behind his words, can be shared with a lot of individuals. So today we are going to be taking a look at a little bit of a story time. I'll explain to you guys exactly what happened, and then we kind of want to break it down to the bigger picture, as well as taking a look at one of the biggest issues in the global Uma Musume community, which is guide makers, content creators, casual player base, are we out of touch, etc, etc. So I'm just gonna jump straight into the story. So this individual has already left my Discord. I have no idea who he is, but he goes by this guy called Runer Rusty Dan Dirt Cheap. I'm not sure if you guys have seen him around the community, or if this is a profile picture, whatever it's gonna be. So to start all the way from the start, this is actually a pretty long story, but I'm just gonna summarize everything to like 5 minutes tops, because this discussion went on for I think almost 2 or 2.5 hours. So I'll sum up everything within 5 minutes, right? So essentially he saw the video on the 9th of March around 2 p.m. Howdy all, I'm not gonna lie, I have a few problems with this video, which is gonna be the why 90% of all Uma suck video, where I basically go through with you guys the top 10 beginners mistakes within Uma Musume. Alright, so I don't know if everyone is using this as a standard guide for racing, farming, or even preparing for the Gemini Carp. So for example, the events are correct. However, just because you have MLB, Chaos on Black, or even Super Creek, you aren't always fully guaranteed swinging Maestro or Professor of Curvature, etc. Right? Which is absolutely true, by the way. There is not a singular event that can guarantee their proc during the career run itself, which is why Uma Musume is ultimately going to be an RNG game, right? So the bottom line is, his biggest concern with like the content as well as the information is that there's a lot of RNG involved, and you can never guarantee a run within Uma Musume. No matter how much money you spend, no matter how much time, there's no such thing as a guarantee, be it your careers, be it your inheritance, be it your stats, whatever it's gonna be. Uma Musume's career are always gonna be fundamentally different, which once again is absolutely true, right? Because that is sort of like the beauty of Uma Musume. Every single career to a certain extent is basically going to the casino, right? You see if you get a good run this time, you see if you get fast learner, see if you get your food events, see if you get your triple rainbows, all that kind of stuff. A lot of things, they are pretty much completely out of your control. But that video's intention, at least the way that I made it, was not to tell you guys, okay, Uma Musume is an RNG game, therefore you should just give up and just do everything to RNG. No, it is to basically make the best use of what options you have and increase the probability of a successful career run based on the decisions that you would be making throughout this entire career, right? So we are starting off with the small steps. For example, like using weight training or using rest, when should you race, when should you do your mood, when should you go for friendship farming, etc, etc, which at the end of the day, all these information, they are all over the internet, right? If you have been playing Uma Musume long enough, right, this game has been out for 4 years, every single one of these things has pretty much been the standard ever since the game launched, right? First year, build up your friendship. Second year, build up your stats. And then last year, if you're going to be going for a little bit more skill points, go for races. If you want to go for all in ace, try and go for a little bit more stats, right, etc, etc. I'm not going to explain this video. Kindly check out this video if you want to see the top 10 beginner mistakes. But essentially, this argument sort of became a very, very ugly brawl between this individual as well as my community members in my Discord. So I have a couple of individuals in my Uma Musume where they actually played Uma Musume since JP in Taiwan. So for example, in this case, he basically got into like a little bit of a discussion with one of my helpers, right? Because they have been playing this game for a very long time, and everybody, almost everybody in my community who has been absolutely nothing but 100% patient and kind, and just trying to treat this guy and feed him information as much as possible. Although some of the times, there are the community's members, they're gonna clown him, they're gonna make fun of him because with all due respect, this guy was a little bit dense, right? right? And eventually it got to a point where he got very, very offended, right? Eat a fat dick, dude. And this is perhaps the turning point of the entire conversation, where my helper basically said, Uma Musume is not a casual game you want to compete. It is the same with all PvP gachas. People who grind and plan and spend will always outdo those who don't. And this is gonna be really resulting in a pretty big back and forth where, buddy, I can't just make better parents in a single run. I can't help that I get 1-star guts or speed from my 1100 speed, etc. Which is also, once again, absolutely true. You can never guarantee anything in Uma Musume, but at the end of the day, it is just doing the best you can based on the amount of energy you're going to be spending, right? And that's exactly going to be a build-up. Mediocre parent builds good ones, which are going to be building strong ones. For this video, to kind of check out this previous video, right? The biggest, the most evil inheritance tip, which is going to be the white farming video, where I basically break down to you guys how you guys can get excellent parents going forward in the future, right? And that eventually I think he felt a little bit more offended for himself, which means then that shouldn't make me a bad player because I plan and think and try during my runs. I'm guessing he's going to runs, and he is going to be, I never said you were a bad one though. And now he's getting a very, very defensive, where he's insinuating that my helper is suggesting that he has been a bad trainer, which is absolutely nothing of the sort. If you want to see this Discord log for yourself, feel free to check out my Discord. Everything is there. We didn't remove anything, even though unfortunately he has left the server. Every single one of his matches is there, and you can kind of just see how this whole ordeal eventually transpired, right? So essentially, he's like, you're kind of making out to be, and all I said is more ever beats low ever, for better or worse. Someone who spams the energy pods will have a better ace than you. It is an undeniable fact, which is once again absolutely true, right? If you're gonna be slamming 50 runs like myself, I did over 50 runs for my Oakley Capital just for that one single god run. That is basically how the game works, right? You want to basically play with probability, not as guaranteed, but the more times you play the game, the more times you raise better parents, then obviously at the end of the day, odds will be in your favor, right? And then he went on going to say, I literally play every single day, take notes every single day, ask for sparks, etc. I'm just tired of being fed misinformation. And then Maladaya said, do you spend your energy jetty? But I think he misinterpreted it as do you actually rest or do you gain energy during the race? And then he was like, I try not to, I play the wit game. Which I think this whole wit game thing, it has literally ruined an entire generation of Uma Musume players, especially on the global server, because wit should never ever be a replacement for your rest, especially if you're doing ace runs, because at that point in time, you're basically praying to RNG for getting food events, for your support card events, and if it doesn't hit you, you're going to be wasting a lot of potential stats, right? But I digress. Let's take on to the topic over here. And another point he went on to is going to be talking about inheritance, where inheritance is absolutely RNG, and yes, you make time to make combat cards. So another one of my player came in and just said, it is a time and luck game, and then he was like, yep, he combat cards, there's tier lists and everything, but unfortunately he is like, inheritance is absolutely RNG, and then my helper was like, nope, it is not absolutely RNG, and he was like, yes, the it is, you can't control the numbers from it at all, and the gold inspiration is only 20% from a double circle, right? And then he was like, you're expecting me to control RNG every single time when I can't control the inheritance except for the circles. And at the end of the day, I think this is where like a massive amount of misinformation and perhaps the sentiment is going to be coming from, where he thinks that inheritance is completely out of his control, and the best he could do is just make it double circles, which would improve the odds of the compatibility. First of all, inheritance is not just going to be stopping on double circle. You can literally go beyond 150 affinity for double circle, which means you have higher proc rates for all of the other stats you're going to be getting, right? And second of all, you can in fact control inheritance, and that is literally how the game itself works. The entire game is based on you controlling your inheritance for every single CM. If you want a medium parent with the respective skills, you are going to be going for the, for example, Major Ryan for your Ghost Ship with the medium S as well as the turret F, right? And then for this example in Gemini Cup, so you're going to be trying to build for long sparks with your speed, with your stamina, with your straightaway spurt, corner, you know, the right-handed, left-handed, you know, spring. Every single one of these are ultimately based on your decision. It is not RNG. You can craft the parents you want, because that is literally what Uma Musume is about. I would dare say more than 50% of the game itself, it is all about inheritance. You craft the perfect inheritance, doesn't even have to be perfect, but at least the usable inheritance for the upcoming CM, and then you try to train your aces based on the inheritance that you have, right? So unfortunately, this guy has completely missed the point over here, because he thinks that inheritance is completely RNG, which is, you know, just couldn't be further from the truth. And then another one of my helpers stepped in and is you plan inheritance, and Game Torah only provides a tool to look out for the affinity, which is a compatibility circle. And then for Runer, he was I tried it and it's not always guaranteed.
and then metadata is like, you know, basically people like myself, we basically craft our inheritance for every single CM,
which is why a majority of the time, inheritance, I would say, takes up more than 50% of the actual stamina I use, and the remaining, I would say, maybe 40 or maybe even 30% is going to be spent on the ace runs, because inheritance is going to be inclusive of both your grandparents and your parents, and once those two are sorted, your ace is pretty much almost going to be complete, right? Doesn't have to spend anywhere near the amount of stamina compared to the actual inheritance itself. Some people, you know, for example, get a Goran 3 times a day. Sometimes they do it like over 50 times. For example, myself, my ogre, I did over 50 runs, you know, just to lose anyways, but it is what it is. And at the end of the day, he was like,
that is absolutely impossible to craft inheritance.
So he thinks at this point, like, inheritance is purely RNG. There's no way you can craft inheritance. This is just pure nonsense. And then, you know, we should basically just, you know, he did some very, very interesting things, right? So towards the end, then he was like, you know,
getting defensive now that your argument's lost, and he was being very, very, you know, confrontational, well, as wife, etc., etc.
You kind of just see for yourself. And then he was like,
I'm saying Ogre is literally the easiest to train.
Example, I think he's comparing this to, for example, Harula as well as King Halo, right? Their careers are a lot more difficult. But the biggest problem that this guy is not facing is that even though Ogre is easy to train, as in to win a URA career, yes, but every single Uma in this game has an equal amount of difficulty when it comes to getting that perfect Goran. Okay, not equal, but it is extremely RNG dependent whether or not you get this RNG Goran parent. Doesn't matter if the career difficulty itself is hard or easy, like King, Halo, or Harurada. So for example, if I wanted my Ogre to just clear URA finale, right, I just wanted her to pass it with flying colors or even like win multiple G1 races, it's gonna be comparatively easier compared to, let's just say, King Halo. But the thing is, if I wanted an Ogre that had, for example, long S, right? If I wanted to give her end closers for Stray Spirit, if I wanted to give her fast learner, if I wanted to pray that I get 1200 speed and 1200 stamina running, you know, my whatever car I'm gonna be running, I need to pray for the food events, I need to pray for the rainbow runs, I need to pray for the success chance, you know, getting the friendship up as high as possible, getting the rainbows during the summer. All these RNG events are gonna be the exact same thing for every single horse, and not a single Uma is different from one another. It is all based on RNG, right? So another thing that this is just completely wrong. And at the end of the day, he's
like, you just don't want to put in time and effort because you spend money, bitch ass.
Which is gonna be another big point, which is a lot of players that are doing very well in Uma Musume. I don't even do well because I didn't even win my previous Taurus Cup, but people that are having good Umas, right, good stats or something that you can see from my Twitter overview from my Gemini, because we spend money. And that's the only thing that people do in Uma Musume. As long as you spend money in Uma Musume, you're gonna be basically guaranteed this card. You're always gonna be better than the free-to-play that do not spend money, right? And then going forward a little bit, he just keeps sticking on to the point where my community keeps telling him to try and control every single event in the game, which once again is the furthest thing from the truth. And then I was like, easy, why is bro so pressed? And then he's like,
because you aren't guaranteed every skill, event, and even race. When I said that earlier, dude, die damn.
And then you can kind of just see this whole debacle unfold for herself. He's really pissed off, and I was like, Runer, just record one full career and trying to just show us exactly how you do your career runs. And then he was like,
I can't, it's on my phone.
So this guy comes in and he was like, I don't want to agree to anything you guys saying. I don't agree to any of the information, despite the fact that this has been going on since JP for the past 4 years, and I don't want to show you guys how I do my career runs because I can't record it. So at this point, I'm 99% sure he has no idea how to play the game, and he is basically pushing all responsibility of his Umas not doing very well to everything but himself, right? But to each their own, he can't record it, it is what it is. And towards the end, it's like, oh my god, KYS, all the counts, like he was like, yep, you can guys see it, I'm not gonna read it. And towards the end, he also brought up some interesting names that I was asking, okay, so where do you get this information where you use wit to replace rest? And then he was like,
Charles Victoria Frontier.
And then he's also quoting a Red Nu, all the other content creators on the global server talking about Uma Musume, and then he provided an example, which is gonna be the train for high scores in Uma Musume by 90%, which is gonna be for our Charles video. And then he referred to the 536 timestamp, which is gonna be literally him choosing the wit option when he has more than 60 stamina. So I'm not exactly sure what this guy is on. So he says that wit replaces rest, except that in this particular scenario, he is literally almost close to 70 stamina, 60 to 70 stamina, and there are two friendships there. Was he supposed to rest there, or like what exactly is going on? So at this end, I think he kind of ended. This was his final sentence.
You guys are stupid. Thank God I'm a casual.
And with that, he left the server. It is what it is. So that was basically my story time regarding this one individual, and like I mentioned, this is literally a one guy, right? If it's just gonna be this one guy, it is what it is. His probably skills of posing is not a big of a deal. But the thing is that he has been saying, as well as the ideology that he represents, it can be reflected in the large, I wouldn't say everyone, but definitely a sizable amount of audience within the global community. And the reason why I say this is because if you want to take a look at my actual guide itself over here, you can see that why 90% of all Uma suck, blah blah, we're roughly at 95% upvotes or like to dislike ratio, which honestly is very, very good. I really appreciate a huge majority of my community. Thank you guys so much for supporting my passion as well as my hobby, Uma Musume. I absolutely still love this game very, very much. But you can see over this is also ironically or unironically one of my most disliked videos to date, aside from the Hadura strategy, so it is what it is. But this is actually one of my highest dislike ratio videos, despite being at roughly 95-ish%. And if you scroll down into the comment section, the top comments, right? So this comment, this is not over here because this is gonna be strategized all you want, but the damn RNG can just decide to not give you any friendship training near the end of the run, which absolutely this is true. And it is what it is. Uma Musume's RNG game. Do all you can, but if the run decides to fuck you, you're just gonna get it is what it is, right? But the other top voted comments over here, so for example this one, right? I love all the guides say use what you have. You don't need MLB Kira Sunblack and Super Creed, then proceed to use a full MLB SR speed and stamina cards while I'm suffering with 0 to 1 LB SSR and SR speed cards and stamina and a bunch of MLB SR width. Another second or rather third highest upvoted comment is yet another guy where the dude tells you it's not your cards, you're just dumb, and then use an MLB deck to prove his point. First of all, I never call anyone dumb. It is what it is. Second of all, use an MLB deck to prove his point. I'm gonna get into this very little bit. And the next one, top mistake in Uma Musume, not being a whale, not playing from day one, not being a strategist tryhard, not finding endless grinding for spots to be a fun activity, not having luck with your card pools. And then after this, let me outline the top mistakes, not wielding as well as by RNG game. So you can see that almost all of my top voted comments on this game, it is perpetually stemming from this idea where the content in Uma Musume, it is not relatable, right? It is too much. There's too much money being spent because we are using max limit break as our cards. So if you want to take a look at the champions meeting, so this was the Major McQueen in question, right? So I essentially got myself this A Blast run Major McQueen running 1185 speed, 800 stamina, 800 power, 350 guts, and 437 width, which honestly is definitely not going to be for Gemini, but I really just did this as a sample career run just to show what sort of stats you guys can be hitting with an MLB card deck running SRs, and I borrowed this MLB Killer Sun Black with the free special week event. Everything else is basically just MLB SRs, right? And then for my inspiration, I kind of just use whatever I have and I just slapped it on over here, right? It was not meant to be anything. I just kind of want to use this as an example to see what sort of stats could you guys be looking at running a deck like this. And the bottom line is, first of all, you're not expected to hit A+, especially as a complete free-to-play. A+ is by no way an easy weight, right? Because A+ is basically more than 12,500 rating, which is extremely high. My initial point was, if your ace runs, your ace Umas, which are the Umas you're bringing to your racers, right, for all of your champions, all that kind of stuff, if they cannot hit an A rating, right, an A rating, very far from A+, by the way, then you're probably doing something wrong. And I list out all of the potential mistakes that you guys could be doing something wrong, which I am willing to bet all of my money on. You are definitely gonna be able to improve your runs if you have been doing any of the mistakes that I actually stated in the video itself, right? Whether be it you're resting way too much or resting way too little, you're not managing your friendship points enough, you're racing too much, whatever it's gonna be, there's definitely something that you can improve of it if you are struggling to even hit an A rank rating for your Uma, right? So at this point, I basically want to get us into the bigger picture I want to talk about right here. Is Uma Musume a game that is too difficult? Is it too hard? Is it too pay to win, right? Are there no ways for a free-to-play player base to actually truly enjoy themselves playing this game? And I sense that a large majority of the population that have been sharing this sentiment probably did not play Uma Musume as their first game, and they most likely would have came from a mainstream game such as those PvE like Genshin, Warring Waves, Zone Zero, HSR, Hoyoverse games, Kuro, whatever it's gonna be, where they actually never really felt the impact of a PvP gacha game. And for the first time in a long time, we have a relatively mainstream PvP gacha game that is going to be Uma Musume. So all things considered, I think players, they couldn't adjust the fact that Previously in PvE games, it was just you yourself against the AI. Whether you clear the endgame content, whether you clear the 3 stars, that's done. You have nothing else to worry about. The moment you clear it, it's over. But in Uma Musume, you're quite literally going to be going up against other players. There's quite literally leaderboards, pools, first place, second place, third place. Everything is on the line over here, whether or not you can achieve the results, which definitely makes a player feel their FOMO, right? They feel the stress of training a good horse, a good Uma, a good deck much higher compared to a pure PvE single player game. Because whether or not you clear it, you have nothing to explain for, right? It is really just a gacha game at the end of the day, and just like every single game, Uma Musume is also going to be a gacha game just for entertainment, right? So if you're not going to be caring about all these kind of stuff, you don't want to sweat it out with every single one of the sweat lords within PvP, that is 100% valid and completely justifiable. What my purpose is and what my channel wants to do is to try and bring information to you guys where you can actually take into your own runs and improve your progression as well as some enjoyment if you do want to take a further look into Uma Musume, as well as just generally speaking getting better results from your Umas. So for example, I think since day one, almost every single content creator, every single JP veteran has been saying you should not be pulling for Uma banners, you should be pulling for support card banners. Number one, support cards basically can be going on any Uma because every single Uma is potential to be SS tier, right? It just depends on how difficult it is to raise them based on inheritance as well as a support card deck, which is why support cards are the foundation for every single one of your Umas. And if you have been playing since day one, you have most likely seen the Kira-san Black banner. And if you have been slamming in Kira-san Black banner, which we have been proven is 100% doable even as a complete free-to-play, getting 200 pulls, you should be having a decent chunk of SR cards in your roster, right? And then afterwards, whether or not you want to pull for Super Creep, whether or not you want to pull for anything else, that's ultimately up to you. But to say that if you are gonna be a complete free-to-play, you don't want to pull on any support card banners. You only want to, let's just say, for example, pull on Uma banners. You want to pull for your waifus, and you're gonna be running with 0 limit break SSRs and SR card decks. Then you can't really have your cake and eat it at the same time, because there are gonna be other players who do not do that, because this is ultimately a PvP gacha game for the absolute endgame. This endgame is all about PvP. Whether you like it or not, that is a matter of fact in Uma Musume, right? And because of this competitive nature, players that want to min-max, players that want to sweat, players that want to use a simulator, check out the banners, want to reroll for 100 hours for MLB Kira-san Black, all these players are also playing the exact same game as you. And if you feel that you are gonna be not able to compete against them, then it's gonna be completely fine, because they absolutely want to min-max this game, and you shouldn't make other players' investment, time, money spent in the Uma Musume impact your own enjoyment as well, because at the end of the day, this is a PvP gacha game. It is really just that simple. So whether or not this game is too difficult, you can kind of just look at it as this diagram over here. Okay, wait, yo, Iru, help me scratch this. Let me draw a better chart. Yeah, let me draw a better chart. So I kind of want to demonstrate this as like a quick little example to maybe better visualize my points. Maybe some, once again, this is not going to be representing every blade in the community, but maybe some of you guys think that, okay, only if you have spent money, right? This is the #1 most important thing to the player base. Only if you spend money, then you can get expected high results. Whether or not this result you get to A+, then maybe this is gonna be your A, maybe this is gonna be your B, right? Maybe this is gonna be your C, and this is just a D. Maybe only the ultra whales, right? Only if you spend money in this game, then you can have a good result of, like, for example, A+. And they fail to take into consideration where you also have to spend a good amount of time as well as having the knowledge of the actual game itself in Uma Musume, right? So just like the perfect example, there are definitely going to be free-to-plays within Uma Musume that will have exceptionally good Umas, well-trained for Gemini Cup, even if they did not spend a single cent, simply because they have been playing this game for a very long time, or they are just very, very knowledgeable about the game. Whether this is they spend a ton of hours playing this game since day one, or they are playing from the JP or the Taiwanese server, maybe they are probably going to be spending somewhere like this, right? Maybe not the absolute tip-top highest in terms of rating, because assuming a whale has the equal amount of time and money, then a free-to-play is just unfortunately never going to be able to match the whale. It is a sad reality of things, but they're definitely still able to achieve exceptionally good performances even as a free-to-play, right? And the thing just goes down where if you don't spend any money, so let's just say this money goes to zero and you only spend time and effort, then you are probably stuck in this purgatory where you just can never get any other horses outside of this B range going to A because of bad RNG, because you have poor inheritance, because you have no MLB Killer Sunblade, because of whatever reason it's gonna be. You just cannot leave this place because this game is too pay to win. You do not have the cards, you did not spend enough money to get a deck you want, and me personally, I think this sentiment is just very, very unhealthy for the community because it will breed a mindset, it will breed an environment where unless you spend money in Uma Musume, then this game is just not worth playing for you as a consumer. If you do not want to spend money in Uma Musume, you're just never ever gonna be able to see any good results whether or not this game is gonna be for you. And I'm not talking about the players that are playing this game purely for casual reasons. If you're just playing for the waifus, going out for the day, collecting all your umas and seeing the outfit, then it completely is not gonna be relevant for you, right? But there's most of the players that still want to get their hands on like all of the champions meeting, right? It may be team charts, but mainly for champions meeting, and you have this sentiment where unless you spend money, you're just never gonna win and you just give up. And you just never put in the time or effort or knowledge anyways, because what is the point if you're just never gonna be able to compete with these whales? And what is the point because you have no MLB SR cards or even SSR cards or whatever it's gonna be, you're just never gonna be breaking through from this, which is at the end of the day going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? The less interested you are, the more disheartened you are, the less willing you're gonna be able to spend your time to build up the knowledge, and with less knowledge, you're gonna lead to less everything, right? I always say that with knowledge in the Uma Musume, it is 100% the most important factor in the game, because even a whale, right, even if you spend your money all the way up, right, all the way up, even if this factor goes all the way to the highest, but if you have like zero wit and you just slam money, I am almost certain you cannot get a good enough Uma for the champions meeting. I'm almost positively certain of that, unless just literally just copy and paste whatever the content creators, the guide makers are gonna be doing, right? So you don't have to hear from me. You can literally see the proof from these over here. This was some like super long ago. There was this document where they release documents the guide from it. Literally, it was the day one combos. You can see there have been results of, for example, in this case, King Halo running basically 0 limit break SSR cards with like a 1 limit break, and closer getting an A rating, 1100 speed, 1000 power, very nice for your sprint. We also have a Daiwa Scala from Mao, 5 speed, 1 power, getting all these limit break 0, limit break 1, also an A rating. And then we do have, for example, another winning ticket with essentially relatively free to play cards all around, right? So these are just a lot of examples that have been proven that even if you do not have max limit break SRs or SSRs, you can still achieve a decent amount of Umas, maybe not able to compete toe-to-toe against the whales, but definitely stronger than the general population, which literally just have no idea what is going on and just playing this game very casually. Because the biggest problem with Uma Musume is not the lack of information, right? The biggest problem at the end of the day is just simply because this game is not easy, right? This game is absolutely not easy, and there's a reason why I have spent, I think at this point, more than 600 hours into the game itself across both mobile and Steam, and the time I've been taking all of my research trying to learn the game itself for like the past 2 months. As a full-time content creator that has been doing this for quite a while now, even I know this game is not easy, and that is sort of why my channel even exists in the first place. I want to take my passion into a video game that I like, for example in this case Uma Musume, and condense everything that I have learned, putting my time, money, effort, everything into, so that you guys, right, you viewers watching this over there, you don't have to spend 600 hours in the game, right? You don't have to spend the time, because you can see from this graph over here, if I am going to be spending the time for you, right, if I have a very high amount of time invested and I condense this into a much more digested 15-ish minute guide video, and not just for myself, right, plenty of other content creators, you know, all within the Uma Musume community, it is literally for viewers to spend less time, because we are spending the time over here. and condensing everything for players to enjoy so that they can still gain a decent amount of results for their Uma Musume racing career, right? Whether or not you want to spend money, that is completely up to you. It is beyond my control, but it is 100% possible with a certainty that you can still raise very, very decent Umas even if you do not want to spend a single cent. Content creators, Uma Musume, veterans, players that play this game a lot, they spend the time to get the wit, to get the knowledge for this game so that players other than us can also gain a better understanding of Uma Musume. So I really hope for the Uma Musume group community to just get a little bit more comfortable, coming to terms with the fact that yes, we are probably not as knowledgeable as we think we are. Yes, we are probably not gonna ever win against the whales, right? Even if we do have 1 LB, 2 LB cards, if you were to compare like this Daiwa Scholar, if you want to send this Mao Daiwa Scholar to against a whale with like 1200 speed, 600 stamina, and 1200 power, you're probably still going to lose. But at the end of the day, it is not about winning against whales, it is about winning against yourself. And that is why I found Uma Musume to be so satisfying, at least for me. I know that every single day I spend playing this game, learning about this game, I know I've been growing, developing as a player and a content creator to know and understand this game a lot better. Even if I'm not gonna be able to win against players that, you know, spend more money, get better RNG, whatever it's gonna be, whether or not I win or lose, it doesn't matter, because as long as I know that who I am today right here playing Uma Musume is gonna be getting more knowledgeable and getting more enjoyment and seeing my Umas come into fruition, right? Seeing my results of Umas with my inheritance planning, flying for my grandparents, my great-grandparents, my parents, borrowing my friends' Acer, slamming all of my TP, slamming all of my gems, refreshing, trying to do the absolute best I can, and I see my Umas coming out with something like this. That is what makes me happy as a content creator and player for Uma Musume. Okay, first of all, don't try to mimic me because nope, this is not relatable whatsoever. It is just my personal deck for my 2 aces I'm going to be using for Gemini. Unless you guys are interested to see how I do my ace runs, let me know in the comments below. But other than that, you don't have to worry about it. This is not meant to be relatable. It is just for my own, right? But still, the content, the guide, the information that I provide, at least for this channel, I really hope to just basically make everyone a lot better, literally to improve as a community and try to get better Umas, even if you are not gonna be able to win against RNG, even if you're not gonna be able to spend every single cent from your job playing into a Uma Musume game, which please do not, by the way. This is a gacha game, this is an online casino. Do not try to spend money in this kind of games and just gain and derive enjoyment from this if you are down for this kind of things, right? My ultimate goal at the end of the day, it is not to berate, it is not to be an elitist, it is not to say that I'm a better player, I'm a better trainer, I'm a better guide maker, or whatever it's gonna be. It is just hopefully the community as a whole can get a deeper understanding for what is understandably one of, at least in my personal opinion, the most difficult gacha games I've seen for recent memory, because it's so unique. Everything else is an open world action RPG tournaments, whatever. This is like almost like a first of its kind, and I really like the way that this game is playing out. So yeah, that is pretty much all I have for today. Is Uma Musume too hard? Is Uma Musume too difficult? And hopefully at the end of this video, you yourself would have found an answer whether this game is going to be right for you, right? If you're not going to be willing to spend, you know, I would arguably say like hours and hours, you don't have to, right? Nobody's forcing you to spend hours and hours spending money on Uma Musume. But the biggest point is basically, if you are not going to invest a whale sweaty meta level of input, then likewise, do not expect a whale sweaty meta level of output, right? It is like the universal law: input equals to output, carries in equals to carries out. It is based on, at the end of the day, your money is gonna help, but if you want to be a casual, just enjoy the game at your own pace, right? So with that, I've come to the end of this content. Let me know what you guys think, because I think this could be a pretty interesting discussion topic within you guys, right? So all the best for Uma's pools, all the best for the upcoming Gemini Cup. I'll be probably posting more content. Not really sure if it's gonna be Gemini. Maybe if you guys are interested to see how my ace runs, let me know. But other than that, I'll see you guys next time. Take care.